Yeah, so then we went on this journey of like, how do we figure out double-sided journey of one, first we were really trying to force like that model to work. So it was like this journey of trying to test different growth engines and GTM motions to try to find channels that like we could drive leads and then sell the product self-serve. There aren't too many channels that you can do that. You mostly need like free channels to do that. You know, you need SEO, you need press or influencers, virality. That's kind of most of your options, right? You know, founder-led content, basically. We did a lot of that. We did a lot of content and we almost like hacked growth just by driving tons of leads.
Hello, everyone. Today we have Vinay over at Process Street. Vinay, great to have you on.
Hey, great to be here, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So for the founders out there who don't know you yet, or the growth executives who don't know you yet, tell us about your backstory. I know it's an interesting one, some history nomading and building your way up to Process Street, the company you're working on today.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short, but I grew up in Australia, Sydney, Australia, kind of had a background in finance and IT. So more on the networking sysadmin side of technical, did that through high school. My dad was like a Cisco engineer. And so I kind of did a lot of training and got skilled up in Cisco and started doing that early on. And I was also really interested in business and finance. And so but what I was studying for is to kind of go into banking or trading or something like that. I studied a lot about finance and businesses and was stock trading from a young age and kind of into that. So my background and interests were kind of this half tech, half business kind of background, right? I did that. I worked a few different jobs, both in like finance. I worked as a tech recruiter. I worked as a sysadmin, kind of in that space. And then I shifted into entrepreneurship because I did the kind of Aussie backpacking traveler thing, if you've ever been to a hostel anywhere in the world. And it was through that experience that I started learning about like building businesses online. I already knew a lot about technology and computers. I was super into that. I'd messed around. I'd built like a couple of just websites on my own, content websites. I built one around like CFD trading, like options trading basically. And had AdSense running on that and made $4 a month or something. But yeah, when I started traveling, I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a real shot because I have the time now. I'm not working, I'm not studying, I'm kind of just backpacking around. And so this can be like a good, side hustle project for me to work on and see if I can make something work. And I pretty much just, followed a lot of the Tim Ferriss kind of playbooks back then, built a Shopify store, built a bunch of WordPress sites. And I wasn't making like as much money as I was making kind of working a full-time, hardcore job, but I was making enough money to like live in Thailand and, work from my laptop on the beach. So I just kept doing that. And the great thing about entrepreneurship is that when you start, like there's no cap, there's no ceiling to what you can do, right? Once you've got something and like, oh, okay, I'm making 30 grand a year and I can sit on the beach in Thailand. That's not a cap. That's just like one of my websites is making $30,000 a year. Now all I need to do is find like the next opportunity and launch the next thing. And like everything just like keeps compounding where you like, follow me, hand that website off to an employee and make 10 grand a year on it and then launch the next thing. And like, so shifting from like kind of employee mode to entrepreneur mode is a total like game changer because everything becomes an opportunity. Now you actually have the time and the capacity to actually do something about that opportunity. And again, maybe they're not going to get the momentum, but you're not going to get like fired, right? If you just stop turning up to that business for a month and then work on a different project for that month. But if you're in a full-time job, you can't do that. You can't just say like, oh, I'm just going to pause this for a month. Let me try this other thing and then like come back if it doesn't work and I'll just pick up where I left off. Like you don't have that freedom and flexibility, right?
What's the origin behind Process Street? Was it born out of creating processes internally for your own companies and you realized there's a there?
Yeah, so it was born out of wanting a better solution internally than we could find on the market, than us just building the solution internally for our team, a very, simple version, and just showing that to our friends, basically, who said they wanted it as well. And that was the beginning of it. And It was really just scratching our own itch, solving our own problem. And we started with this pretty simple idea, which was like simple, repetitive process checklists where you could kind of include content and have the checklist track whether someone's done it, right? We didn't really know how popular or how big this was going to be. But as we started seeing all the feature requests, we started doing math on how long it would take my co-founder to build all this stuff. Like it would actually be more than 10 years of him just working alone, right? We've been building it for 10 years with a big team. We're like, okay, if we want to make this actually a great product, we're going to need to make this its own business and really take it seriously, right? And that's how Process Street started.
I know you have your fair share of war stories, both in the way of fundraising as well as growth. Maybe talk about some of the things other venture-backed founders or growth executives might encounter that can make their life a lot easier, since you've been in the trenches and you've dealt with it personally. What lesson or lessons can you impart to others who are on the exact same journey as you?
Yeah, I think that the biggest journey we've gone through and the biggest challenge for us has been shifting our focus and strategy from where we started the product to later. And I would say the issue was that we didn't think about this or understand this clearly enough early on. Now, you could say it's not really an issue because there's this kind of classic hero's journey startup story where you kind of like build something cool and then you kind of like tinker on it and iterate on it and listen to the markets, the lean startup, and then you optimize it from there. And maybe that is like the only way that you can get there a lot of the time when you're building something new. For us, and this is also pretty common, part of that journey is going from selling to small businesses to selling to larger companies. So again, if you can start straight with enterprise, that can save a lot of heartache, but a lot of people can't because they can't raise the money and they can't show traction with enterprise initially, right? So the journey is you build a product that's simpler because it takes less money to build a few features than a lot of features. But the only people that are going to use a product, and we're talking B2B SaaS here, the only people that are going to use a product that has a few features and a lot of features are the small businesses that are willing to like tinker and try with like different products. So you almost have to sell to small businesses to begin with because they're the only people who will actually buy your product anyway. When you're selling to small businesses, you have a different price point, a different sales motion. And then as you're moving to enterprise, all that changes. So there's a big rebuild in your go-to-market engine. Now, the issue for us was not only were we moving up market, we also didn't even know who our ideal customer was, right? And so this is a challenge with like horizontal tools, especially. For us, it was like processes for all businesses, right? All businesses need processes. That was the original targeting. And we were hoping that we could build some type of like self-distributing product like Slack or like Zoom that you could just kind of like target anyone and you automatically grew through this kind of like distribution loop. And we tried that for a long time. And I think we really tried to push like a square peg through a round hole. It just turns out that the adoption curve for processes is a lot longer than the adoption curve for like a Slack or a Zoom, because you can't actually get value out of a process without first building and designing the process. And so there's this like build phase that where you can't really do anything in the app. And then once the build phase is done, then you can start getting value out of the app. Whereas like Zoom, you can like get the link, install Zoom, and then in 1 minute be on a Zoom call and then be getting value out of Zoom 1 minute after your first invitation or introduction to the product. Whereas for Process Street, like, today it takes 15 hours, for a proper implementation to build a process, integrate it, test it, have multiple people test it. Like first we were really trying to force like that model to work. So it was like this journey of trying to test different growth engines and GTM motions to try to find channels that like we could drive leads and then sell the product self-serve. There aren't too many channels that you can do that. You mostly need like free channels to do that. So you need SEO, you need press or influencers, virality. That's kind of most of your options, right? Founder-led content, basically. We did a lot of that. We did a lot of content and we almost like hacked growth just by driving tons of leads. All of our metrics were kind of pretty weak in terms of our conversion rate and our LTV and most of these other numbers. But because we were just really good at hacking SEO, hacking Reddit, hacking YouTube, doing a lot of this stuff, kind of from my marketing days that I brought in, we were able to almost like pad our mistakes in the rest of the funnel just with like an abundance of cheap leads. And that works well as long as you can continue to unlock these growth hacks that continue to stack your lead growth. At some point, most growth hacky channels like dry up, right? They either hit some type of maximum or there's too much competition or whatever, right? Our test slowly started failing more and more and things kind of slowed down. Let's test the more traditional marketing channels, like let's go look at ads or outbound or partnerships or events or like any of the normal stuff that's usually like a layer on growth. And suddenly that started revealing the weaknesses in the rest of the funnel, right? Where our LTV is too low and our conversion rate is too low. And so that made all these other channels incredibly expensive and not viable channels to scale. And so I think that that's one of the big lessons is like trying to scale and pump through growth through top of funnel while not having like a good handle on some of your other key metrics. You think that your CAC to LTV is good because the traffic that you're getting is like all founder led in your network, kind of like some growth hacky traffic. And you look at the numbers and you're like, oh, our CAC's like actually really good. But as soon as you actually need to, unlock a new channel, suddenly your CAC goes through the roof and your whole model breaks. You need to have really, really strong confidence that you actually have a true viral like product that will scale infinitely. It's not just like spikes from an influencer or something here or there that's kind of bringing in cheap CAC. Or you need to make sure that you have a plan and a strategy to raise LTV and increase that contract size in some way. Then you go through this whole other exercise of like, okay, well then how do we charge more? The next question is, well, the people we can charge the most are the people that we add the most value to. Right? How do we figure out the people we're adding the most value to? And then to kind of go down this strategy exercise, basically, right? Of like, where can we play and how do we win? And then that becomes an interesting exercise too. So one of the challenges that we had there was a lot of processes are tied to value and they're not necessary, and it's not necessarily an activity metric. If a process is being done a lot of times, that doesn't mean that it's adding the most value. In fact, a lot of the processes that are only done, once a year, like, I don't know, doing your taxes or like making sure that you pass your audit are very, or doing, sending one of the $10 million investments that you do each year, right? Like those processes are extremely high value, but they're not high volume. We might have other customers that are like a call center in the Philippines or something that's using us with extremely high volume, right? They have a big team, but the amount of value they're getting from the product is a lot less than a huge hedge fund that's using us in New York for doing, 10 investments a year. So how do you figure that out? Like there's no like number in the database that I can look at that says that hedge fund is getting more value from Process Street than the call center. On every metric, if I look at like users or logins or runs or approvals or tasks or form fields, like anything, that call center is massively above like the hedge fund on all of their activity. The number of integrations or just anything that they're doing, right? It's bigger. It becomes this very manual process, right? Of like actually going in and truly understanding the value that you're giving to the customers and just having a ton of conversations with customers to really understand like where you're offering and delivering the most value. What we realized is that the companies that really care about processes, the companies that get the most value out of processes, are not the companies that are using us for some type of efficiency or productivity gain. Like you say every company wants processes and they're nice to have and they make the company run smoother, and maybe they make the company a bit more structured for scale, or maybe they make the owner not have to work on Sunday. Like those are kind of common, reasons you would want to systemize your business, but those are all nice to have. It's like you don't have to have that to keep running your business. It just makes your business a bit of a nicer place and an easier thing to run. The companies who have to have processes are the companies that are required to have processes for regulatory or compliance reasons, right? So if you need to lease a building in a certain way, like it has to have running water, it has to have like working lights, and if you lease your business without running water, you're breaking the law, or you lose your real estate license, or you lose lose your construction license, right? Lots in finance and banking, right? If things are not done in the right way, if you're a fund manager and you're managing someone else's money, you don't have a good record of like where that money went, like that is, breaking some type of SEC compliance rule, right? So, and then hospitals and all these things, like they need to make sure that they operate. It's not optional to operate in this way. It's a requirement for you to be able to stay in business and keep your top customers, or be able to collect your payments or whatever. So yeah, that's what we've really understood, that those are the types of companies that really get the most value out of Prostitute. And so that's become a big part of our strategy. It's focusing on these compliance and regulatory heavy use cases. So now our ICP is our mid-sized companies inside financial services, real estate, healthcare. We're also starting to do a lot of government stuff as well.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I saw you broke into the likes of Salesforce, Menlo Ventures, among others. I know after you exhausted your initial hacks of Reddits, gaming Reddits, or it could have been PR or other such channels, were there any GTM plays that worked for you after that helped you scale more consistently, more predictably?
Driven most of our growth from is what you call kind of like organic / content, right? And that's just the gambit of all sorts of content, SEO, video, social, just kind of like wrapping it all together. And that still produces a consistent flow of leads and really drives like our inbound sales team. And then we went through and we tried a bunch of other stuff, all the things, from outbound email to ads to events to all sorts of stuff. Where we've really found the most success in the second channel that we're really focused on scaling and growing is partnerships. And it's like the channel. And actually it's this combination of partnerships and in person. It's interestingly getting boring. Like it's getting boring and it's going back old school. Like, we found that there's just been a huge drop in responsiveness just to most digital channels. LinkedIn works pretty well, definitely better than email, but across the board, responses are down a lot. It's just it's a lot of churn and burn. SEO is just incredibly more competitive than it was when we started 8-9 years ago, and that's being eaten by AI. Although there's definitely a bunch of interesting like AI plays right now that we're experimenting with. Two kind of things unlock this, right? One is a higher ACV. This is like an higher ACV in a more complex product. This is like an interesting phenomenon where we started the product, and a lot of our messaging around the product was like, it's super simple and easy to use. You can get started. Anybody can use it. And the interesting thing is that partners don't want to work with a product that's super simple and easy to use, because partners make their money from implementation fees. So if it doesn't take very long for you to implement and configure a product, then it's not really an interesting solution for a partner to want to work with, because they want to be able to charge a lot for their implementation fees. So an interesting part of like what we had to do with the product is like make it a lot more complicated by adding a lot more functionality and powerful AI workflows and APIs and code and like a lot of things where you can just like do a lot more powerful customization and automation with it. And that actually gave a reason for somebody to want to hire a partner to come in and actually configure that. And it also allowed the partner to charge enough, so it made it be an interesting product to work with. And then there's also this kind of price point thing. We also had to like, again, figure out who our ideal customer was and then significantly increase our price. Like when we first were selling it as a self-serve product, you could buy it for $30 for one user. You could just go in and buy one user. Now our product's kind of selling more in the 20 to 30K per year price range for kind of like an initial standard offering. Part of that too is like if a partner needs to make a $20,000 or $30,000 professional services engagement for like that to be a viable customer for them in their business. If you're already selling the product for $3,000 and then you come in and tell somebody, oh, you need to pay $30,000 for implementation, they're like, wait a minute, that's like why am I paying 10 times as much to set up this product as I'm paying for the product itself? Like that becomes this weird pricing problem. And so you actually need to be able to sell like the product for a higher amount for the professional services engagement to even like make sense from a pricing perspective. So it's like this combination of figuring out, okay, who are we exactly targeting and who are the right partners for that, and then also getting the right pricing and like kind of packaging for both the software and the professional services together, and figuring all of that out, unlock the partner channel. Now we just, now we have this kind of whole separate motion around, like, we're really actively trying to recruit partners. We're having a lot of success to our partners. We're sending 6-figure implementation contracts left and right to our partners. They're loving it, and we're building really great relationships. And then now we're kind of taking these relationships and we're taking them offline. So we're trying to build partners in every city in the world, basically. We're trying to do local events with those partners in the different cities. And that's really becoming a strong go-to-market engine.
This episode is brought to you by Convert.ai. Convert.ai helps B2B SaaS and services hit their growth records. For the past decade, they've helped companies from YC, A16Z, seed, Series A stage companies, all the way up to the likes of BitGo, Adecco, Microsoft, SEMrush, Coke, hit growth records by handling their end-to-end demand generation. If you're interested in working with a partner that handles your end-to-end demand generation and actually works on a performance basis, putting their skin in the game to help your company grow, get in touch. The domain name is Convert.ai, and the link to book is convert.ai/book. With that out of the way, let's move on to the show. Love it. Yeah, going offline. Let's talk about the polar opposite of going offline. Let's talk about those AI GTM plays you're excited about. What's an example of something you're looking to test out into 2025, the year ahead?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's already pretty deeply integrated in a lot of stuff we do. For example, just like case study generation is like incredibly simple today. You can have almost any like CSM, any CS person go and do a 20-30 minute call, give them a little script. You can stick that into ChatGPT with a well-crafted prompt, and you've got a case study, like total time. You can even just like go in and get the permission from the customer, go in and suck out like Gong transcripts and have GTP make that case study. You don't really need to do a recording half the time. If they've already gone through a discovery process and a sales process with your sales team, suck out those 4 or 5 calls and you've got a case study. Like, you can do that in 5 minutes. We're a lot of stuff that we're doing around these content prompts where I'm almost just trying to enable all the GTM team to create their own content. So the case study is a good example, but like, we have this thing called a collaboration document. This is for an example of like how we have evolved our sales process. So for every deal, we create a collaboration document. It's just a Google Doc, and it gets pulled up at the start of your first discovery call, and it's got a bit of an agenda on it, and it gets shared on the screen. This is going to be the call. The very first heading is a thing called commitments, where we track, it's like check boxes, and we track like commitments from both our side and their side. A section called milestones. Then we have like we use gap selling, but it could be like your med pick or like whatever your kind of like qualification stages are, and you can word those in a way that is more friendly to the customer, right? And then kind of like a meetings note section, right? And so we'll go in and we'll say, okay, this is kind of how we're going to manage this deal. We're going to use this document as our central point of truth for everybody. We're going to review it on every call. I'm going to send it to you. You can comment on it, customer, right? And this is going to be the way that we create alignment for the whole deal. And so after during the first call, they might, the main thing they're only asked to do, the AEs are asked to do, they're not asked to fill out this whole big document. They're just asked to get the commitment section done. Right? So at the end of the first call, what are the commitments we agree on? What are you going to do as an account executive? I'm going to send this collateral. I'm going to schedule this meeting. I'm going to loop in this person. I'm going to set up a custom demo. And then what are you going to do, customer? I'm going to send you this spreadsheet that outlines our process by this date. I'm going to connect this person into the thread and set up a demo by this date. And like, okay, cool. So we all agree on the commitments. That's brought up a couple of times in the call, and then it's done, right? Then when the call's done, the AE goes into Gong, gets the transcript, scrapes some of the details out of Gong, and then drops it into this prompt that generates out the whole deal doc. So it builds out all the gap, what's the current state? What's the problem? What's the problem they're trying to solve? Like, what's the impact of this problem? What's the compelling event or critical event that's driving this? Who was involved? Like, blah, blah, blah. Here are all the meeting notes. Here are and so it builds out this whole rich, beautiful document of the whole deal. And then that document gets sent to the customer. Each call, we then go back in and kind of re-update that document with the next Gong transcript. So you're building out this document that's like adding notes and improving improving the, like, building out the discovery phases, like, increasing the understanding of the current state or of the problem that's being solved. And as more information is collected over more and more calls, it's building this into a more and more robust document. And that document is used to create alignment, but it becomes really, really powerful because what happens is that document starts getting circulated internally at the organization, right? So when it comes to like time for the proposal, the CEO gets the proposal, and along with it, they get this collaboration document. And that document is this whole document that's built out with the problem, all the different details of the problem, why it's important, what the impact's going to be. Like, everything is all the kind of like material that he would need to understand why he would sign this proposal. We call that the invisible decision maker, along with the proposal document. So one, it really helps with closing the invisible decision makers. Two, it becomes this point of leverage for pricing negotiations. So as you're going through each call or each phase of the sales process, you're getting agreement from the customer along the way. So do you agree that everything we've written down here is correct? On the second call, after you've done this deal doc, the collaboration doc, on the second call, we start the second call with the document open on a shared screen, right? That's like how you come into the second call. Hey, before we do the demo, I just want to make sure and go through here and make sure that everything that was written here is correct. I want to make sure I didn't get anything wrong. I want to make sure that we didn't miss anything or misunderstand anything. Can you please confirm this is the impact that it's going to have? This is the problem we're solving, right? Like, and go through, and they might comment on it, or they'll change, or actually consider this, and they'll build that out. And you're like, okay, cool. Now we've got agreement along the way saying that we understand that we're solving $1 million problem for you. And you've agreed that this is $1 million problem many, many times. I have recordings of you agreeing. You've checked the document. You commented on the document. So now we're solving $1 million problem for you. So what's the difference between this being $70,000 and $50,000? Like, and so that gives you strong negotiating leverage at the end of the deal. And so, yeah, using AI, like the A's just didn't do it before, right? Like, it was just, they just didn't do it. And now that it's like, here's like a super quick prompt. They're seeing the impact that it's having on the customer. It's completely unlocked like a new way of selling. And that same structure of prompt, where it's a 50-page prompt. At the top of the prompt, there's parts for them to paste in the call transcript, paste in this and that. But then it's this huge prompt that's got like all the collateral about our company in it. So our message house and our problem statements and our solutions and our case studies and our value points, and all this context is in this prompt. You could put that into a custom GPT, right? And like put like as well. We keep everything in prompts because the context windows are so big now, and it allows you to easily switch and test between different platforms, and they're constantly releasing different features. And and also, if you want to create a lot of different custom GPTs, now you need to like train your team, hey, go find this GPT, go find that GPT for this use case. Whereas when everything's just in one Google Drive and it's all just prompts, like just go get that prompt. You can go use it anywhere. So you only have to train the reps like one behavior, which is like go get your prompt from the prompt folder, and then that's it, right? With these prompts, you can get like incredible results as long as you're giving the right context in. We include all this kind of like generic company information, and then we'll usually include examples, right? So here are the 3 best collaboration docs that we've created. Model these as part of your example, and then consider all this other context about the company and the value points we're trying to hit, and the pain points that we're trying to highlight. Then you can create a similar type of prompt for, write me a case study, respond to an email, like write this deal doc, write this pitch deck, like anything basically. And all you're really doing is switching out the examples that you're giving in each of those prompts.
Yeah. How do you see, since you're so involved in business processes, if increasingly, and I see YC has this as a thesis right now, is A16Z2, verticalizing every business process that is a pass to butter process, like building case studies, summarizing transcripts and proposals. If those are agent nodes in a process workflow, like let's say a really finely tuned, well-prompted engine that gets you 90% of the way there, how do you see businesses looking like, let's say a year or two out? What will the composition look like? How do you see the whole landscape changing? And
one of the things that AI does is it shifts a lot of the human work from like creation to curation. And it's no longer that you're really spending all this time and energy, writing the documents, building the decks, creating the images, but AI is giving you 10 examples of this image or 10 examples of this deck or 10 versions of this document. And you're curating and it's more about this, like, which is the version that is going to be the one that's going to have the highest impact, right? And so it becomes this kind of quality control, like curation process. So that's going to be one side of it. There's like the curators, that's like the editing side. And then there's going to be the creation side, which is going to actually switch from being a writer to being a AI workflow creator, right? So that job will switch from, you won't have a team of writers, you'll have a team of operations people that are basically just building workflows all day. So maybe before you have a team of writers and you have a smaller editing team, basically the writing team goes away. That gets replaced by like an operations team that's building workflows for multiple, but you'd still probably have the editor layer that is actually editing and quality controlling and curating the output of the AIs. If you could think that like a lot of content work will change from like writing content to collecting content. So more of this journalistic kind of approach where, say, you've got a content creator that's more of a journalist, and what they're doing is all they're doing all day is they're going around interviewing your team, interviewing your customers, interviewing your partners, and like trying to find these nuggets of unique insights, interesting ideas, funny stories, case study moments, value moments out of these different conversations. And then the AI does all the creation work. And then you have like a quality control kind of component at the end. But that creation piece in the middle is getting automated away.
I got one last question for you. And this is only because everyone loves a good underdog or comeback story. And this is about your experience fundraising out of that accelerator. Walk us through that journey.
Oh, yeah. That was probably the worst part of my career, those 9 months. Venture capital wasn't as operationalized as it is today. So everything, it was much more of like an insider game. There wasn't, the VC firms weren't doing these kind of like, they didn't have podcasts, they weren't marketing, and they weren't like doing anything like that. Everything was like referral based. And the timelines were just way slower, right? Like the average time that seed deals were getting done was like 3 months. The valuations were way lower. And so it was difficult. And so me and my co-founder, I'm from Australia, my co-founder's from Canada. And so we had no connections at all, right, in Silicon Valley. Like we didn't work at any company there. We didn't go to didn't even go to any school in America that had some type of like alum connection into Silicon Valley, right? Like nothing. So we kind of came in completely cold, and we really had to just build that network from the ground up. And so a lot of the first, we just kind of spent 6 months just grinding on meetings, not getting any money collected at all. And I was just in this grind mode of like doing 5 meetings a day, and 5 meetings a day actually is a lot because you're traveling to the meetings, it's all in person, and they're important meetings, they're pitches with funds. And so you're doing an hour or two of prep work. You're doing they're asking you these complicated questions that require you to do like build custom reports and do custom SQL just to like answer the question that they've asked you. So you've got hours of follow-up work after each of these meetings. And then we had to like come back and actually like run the business at night. So it would just, from 8 p.m. I'd just be like answering support tickets and catching up with the support ticket backlog, and Cameron would be like fixing some bug or something, and we'd do that between 8 to midnight and then back out pitching at 8 a.m. And we did that for 9 months, but for the first 6 months we closed almost no checks. Maybe we got 1 or 2 angel checks for 20K or something. What it ended up being was, for that first 6 months, it was basically us having to build that network. In the end, that 6 months of grind paid off because that opened up these doors and these connections and these introductions that 3 or 4 people down the chain ended up becoming the lead investor or whatever. But it was almost like a lot of that work that people had done naturally by just going to school in America or like having a job at a FANG company or something. We had to kind of just compress all that into our own 6 months of just grinding and networking. And yeah, that was like the closest point that I think that we were to giving up and thinking it wasn't possible. But today it's a very different world. Like I think that when we first had our first call with our lead pre-seed investor to when they invested, it was 4 months. I think that today the same investor targets to do 2 to 4 weeks. same investor, right? Just the times have changed. They have these big marketing machines. They have all these scout engines. They have all these things. And so they're like, before it was almost like they didn't have, it was a lot more senior investors, and they didn't even have the capacity to just like filter all the inbound. And now it's all operationalized. So it's very easy for you to just get those meetings, and everyone moves a lot faster. So you can learn and kind of like understand whether you're going to be successful or not in a lot shorter time frame. But I don't know. I don't really know what the upsides of it is. I guess like it was a good bonding period for me and my co-founder. We lived in like the same hotel room, and got to learn a lot about each other's personal systems in very in-depth ways, but I think it's better how it is today.
Yeah, I mean, it's more operationalized in part due to you and your platform that you built, right? Because they're using Process Street, right? Kind of you fixed the problem that you were personally dealing with in a very roundabout way, but
I don't think we initiated the change, but we helped with the change management. Yeah. Yeah. So venture capital firms are actually a very big like sector for us. We have lots of the biggest VC funds in the world as customers. Yeah. I think it was COVID that like actually created that catalyst, but then we became a good tool to actually execute that change. Yeah.
Beautiful. Vinay, I just got a quick round of rapid fire questions to close this out. First thought, best thought, no wrong answers. First one to kick off is your favorite app or your tool to grow your business other than Process Street.
ChatGPT, but I'm pretty pumped on this tool called Flow. And it's basically this little app where you just press a button and lets you talk into the computer, and it uses AI to dictate what you're saying. And it just has really sped up like my typing flow. I just talk into ChatGPT, and then I have ChatGPT create a document for me, and my document creation speed is like 10x what it used to be.
You can, with long prompts, it saves like 5 minutes per prompt as you're writing it out. I'm going to back you up on that one. That's a great pick. One person or colleague, mentor, guide, coach, peer that you look up to and you draw inspiration from when it comes to building your company.
Someone that I'm like following pretty heavily right now is, I forget his last name, Jacko from Winning by Design. And he just came out with a book recently called Revenue Architecture. That's a really interesting go-to-market playbook.
What single piece of advice, if you had a time machine and reflecting on your early career, would you go back and give yourself if you only had 10 seconds? That would save you months or even years of effort.
Identify your ideal customer, or the customer that you're adding the most value to.
Favorite way to re-energize and unwind from the day-to-day founder grind?
I just put it in a sauna, so love the sauna.
Love that. Amazing. And what's one question you ask yourself when you get stuck and you need a fresh perspective to get unstuck and work around or work through a difficult problem?
One question that I ask myself.
More perspective.
Usually what I try to do is I try to go and see how other people have solved this problem, right? So I try to go and do research or read books and try to like ask myself, how have other people who have been in my shoes solved this problem before, or similar situations, and kind of start there.
Modeled and modify what's worked for others. Anything else you would like to leave with our audience today? A community of people who wake up each day to grow their B2B companies. Any parting words?
It's been an interesting couple of years as there's been a lot of rapid change, but I do think that that's creating a lot of new opportunity as well. I think that, what's old is new again. There's a lot of noise out there now in the digital world, and we're seeing a lot of great success with our partners. And, if you are interested in building a partner relationship with us, we'd love to talk.
Where would you like to point people to, Vinay, who can find out more about what you do, about Process Street, any places you'd like to have them connect?
You can follow me on Twitter, VinayP10. You can learn more about Process Street at process.st. For the partner program, it's /partners.
Beautiful. Vinay, thanks for coming on the program.
Great to be here. Thanks, Chris.
Likewise.